Welcome to Lit Happens on Shaw TV. I'm Kara Stelmastrick. Joining me now is local author Marilyn Matice, and we're going to get right into the book that you've brought here. So The Adirondack Chairs, this is your first book?
It's the first one that's been published. I currently have about 30 that I'm working on.
Oh my goodness.
Anywhere from children's search and find books up to preteen books.
Interesting.
And another book that's similar to the Adirondack Chairs.
Okay, so what is it about this one that made it the one that got into print? How did it make the cut?
I'm not really sure, but 2009 I had spent a year in the hospital, and 2010 my mom passed away, and that's when I decided that it was time to get serious with my writing. So this is basically an homage to my parents and my family.
Very nice. So if you don't mind, could you just outline the story a little bit for us?
It basically takes 40 years of the life of Tessa. Her father and his brothers buy a piece of land up in northern Saskatchewan and decide to build a cabin. They want a place where their families can get together and get away from, the bustle of the city, to be able to keep the family closer. And it takes her through 40 years of her life. And it starts out with her getting the cabin ready to open up to introduce her grandchildren to the cabin. And she goes back in time to 1978 when they first built the cabin, and goes back and forth in time, but talks about her family and things that they've been through. So
in your life then, was there the family cottage that was the touchstone for summers?
My aunt and uncle had a cottage, and the one in the story is sort of based on it a bit, especially the wraparound deck, because that was something that everybody really enjoyed. But yes, I've spent most of my life summers up at Emma Lake, Christopher Lake, so I wanted to be able to do that with my grandchildren also, so I used to go up to Murray Point quite a few years. So all of the information about waking up in the morning and hearing the birds and everything is all from my own experience.
Hey, so is this book somewhat, I don't want to say completely autobiographical, but somewhere
around there? It is
there?
Somewhat, to the point where it shows at 15 years of age, Tessa loses somebody important to her, and it's not quite, I didn't lose somebody to a death, but it's the same idea. But yes, an awful lot of me is in the book.
Very nice. So this is the first book, like you said, that you went out and decided, I'm going to make this a book, I want it on paper. How did you go about publishing it?
It was lucky chance for this particular one here. I had been checking out different publishers, and a lot of them have quite a long waiting list just for them to check it out. And I had had a knee replacement done of September that year, and I decided to finish writing the book, and I sent the synopsis to Kellen Publishing. And Christmas Eve, she sent me an email saying, "We want your book. Please send us." And so that was a nice Christmas present, and it was published before Easter.
Oh wow, so it was actually not that long to even get it published.
That's correct, yes. She is mostly an e-publisher, but she does, like I said, I'm in Kobo and Kindle and EPUB, so it's a lot easier than people think in some ways, but a lot of people will agree with me that sometimes it's hard to let go of the babies, and because that's something that's you always put a bit of yourself in every book.
Well, that's what that was going to be my next question, is how much do they kind of help and get their fingers in there a little bit?
One of the biggest things is to find a place where you can talk about it. We say at the Prince Albert Writers Group, even if you've never written one word, but you're interested in it, come to the meetings and talk to us.
Right.
I joined the Writers Group 15 years ago, and I was a very shy, quiet person, never had even read many of my poems to my family or anything, so it was a big jump for me. But they helped out tremendously with resources, workshops, and the Saskatchewan Writers Guild is also very good with things like that.
Nice, so you had a lot of guidance then?
Definitely, yes, and that makes all the difference in the world too if you have support from your family. that makes a very big difference.
Excellent. And so the cover itself, was that with help from the publisher, or was that also family?
No, this particular one here was one that I found online and purchased online.
Oh, okay.
But if you go onto my website, my Facebook page, you'll see I have a video there, and all of the photos taken there were taken by a then 10-year-old granddaughter.
Oh, wow.
While we were at a family reunion. A lot of pictures of trees in northern Saskatchewan. So she was very pleased to be able to be a part of it.
That's a really nice inclusion. So you mentioned that it went from Christmas to Easter to get the book published. So the whole creation of this baby that you didn't want to let go of, how long did this book take to write?
I started writing it in 2010, and it was one of those books where I kind of start with almost like a skeleton, you know, and you just get the bare bones, and I need to get the whole story out all at once. And then you go back and you put, you know, flesh and bone, and I put it away for about 2 years. And then, like I said, when I had my knee replacement and I was kind of stuck, I picked up the computer and figured, well, perhaps I should do something with this, and the rest is history. So very lucky.
So when you write these books, do you definitely know where it's going and it does what you want it to, or do you find it kind of sometimes going off on its
Oh,
own?
it always goes off on a tangent somewhere. I have people say, well, I always write an outline for my book, and that was something I had to do after Kellen Publishing accepted my book, was to write an outline, because I didn't have one.
Right.
So, and I mean, I have books where I know the first chapter, the middle chapter, and the last chapter, but I'm not sure about the middle yet. I'm unfortunately one of those people where I have 100 voices in my head speaking at all times, so my imagination just goes wild.
And if people do want to find this book, how do they get their hands on it?
Kellen Publishing online. You can purchase it online. It's also available in Kindle and Kobo.
Okay.
We do not have any at Cole's bookstore anymore, but if you ask Joe, he'll get a hold of me and we can get some more books in there.
Very nice. Excellent. So on top of writing and working on this back catalog of projects that you've accumulated, you're also, I'm going to say, somewhat of an inspirer of writers, because you're involved with the Prince Albert Writers Guild as well.
That's true. I'm a member of the Saskatchewan Writers Guild, and I'm involved with the Prince Albert Writers Group. I was the president for 4 years. Had to step back because of work and grandkids and everything else, but I'm still involved with it. They took me from being a poet to being able to start writing books. I had never written a book before, I'd never tried. I do have quite a number of poetry, and do have 2 anthologies that I've sent out.
Oh, wow.
So I'm hoping that perhaps I can, a lot of those are about Saskatchewan and about the elevators disappearing and old abandoned homes and that sort of thing. Saskatchewan has been my home my whole life, so I'm very proud to be from Prince Albert.
Very nice. So when did you start writing?
It's about 11 years old. I was lucky enough to, I wrote a poem about John Diefenbaker and was able to give it to him when he unveiled his statue at the library back in 1977, I think it was.
Okay.
And it was always something, my little thing that I did. Growing up in a big family, sometimes you need something that you can do on your own, and writing has always come naturally to me, so.
Wow, that's really, and did you start with poetry then?
Yes, I did, yeah. And like I said, up until about 2008, that's all I'd ever written.
Really?
So, and like I said, now I have quite a number of books. I even have a series of an Alter Earth for children, tween kids actually.
Oh, wow.
I have grandkids that are in that age between 10 and 13, and there's not a whole lot for them, especially boys.
Right.
So I've been trying to break into that. Not successful yet, but I keep trying.
And you've got a test audience then, so that's interesting.
I have one grandson that spends hours sitting in my window seat reading my books and letting me know if there's a problem or if he doesn't understand something. So yes, it's it's quite wonderful.
Nice. So would that, you know, in a perfect world, if other books were to come out in the future, would those be the next ones you would want to see out there?
Yes, actually, I have 2 of the books written. It's called The Chosen Ones, and it's about basically a young group of kids who are expected to save their world. They have mages and chosen ones who are like martial art fighters, and all sorts of mythical creatures like dragons and everything. And so far, the grandkids, almost all of them, I have from age 4 up to 20, and they all love the books, so hopefully.
Very interesting. So that's quite a range, because you go from this lovely family history based around a cottage into quite fantastic worlds. So are these the kinds of things you enjoy reading yourself?
Oh yes, yes. I fell in love with Margaret Atwood when I was a child. My father read Louis L'Amour. Grace Livingston Hill was my mother's, and everything, you know, the Nancy Drew mysteries, all of those when I was
Love
growing
Nancy
up.
Drew.
Yes, very much so. But that was something that I've always been a ferocious reader, so.
Nice. Well, it's really interesting. You go from poetry to books to children's stories and young adult. That's fantastic. So people watching, and they think they have a story in them. I mean, you've helped a lot of people, I'm sure yourself as well, develop writing. So what advice can you give them?
My advice is if you feel that you have something inside of you, to put it down on paper. I spent about 3 years trying to get into a routine of writing regularly. So I would sit down at the computer and start typing. Sometimes it would be absolute nonsense, but usually after a few minutes I would start getting an idea for one of my books. I've never had a problem with writer's block, because if I can't figure out something in one book, I can go to another one. And my books now cover a wide genre, including a mystery one a detective mystery that I'm writing also.
Oh, wow.
So, but these books here are ones that I know that my grandchildren will read. The library has a copy of the book. Some of the high schools and that here in Prince Albert have copies of the books.
Yes.
So they're suitable for a younger audience also.
Thank you very much for coming in, Marilyn, to discuss your work. I appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.
And you can watch past episodes of Lit Happens on shawtv.ca.